chair, as well as the National Committee, Ms. Amherst, and everyone else who went into the facilitation of this event, which is very important. So a round of applause for everybody who went into planning and making sure that this happened. Beyond that, thank you everyone for being here, prospective members, actual members, our esteemed candidates. We appreciate you all as well. My name is Derek Coleman. I am from Shirley, Massachusetts, where I live with my wife and 4 cats. I am prior Air Force, prior Department of Defense, federal civilian. My position was targeted in the current administration at the onset of it when there was some pretty intense attacks in the federal workforce. That is what spurred me to first join and look into a way to fight back, and here I am today. I did not do it alone though. On April 2nd, 2025, myself, Amelia Smith, who is our treasurer, Jeremy Strixick, who is our secretary, Stephen Lamb, who is our National Party delegate, and Ethan Glass, who is my vice chair, convened and formed the first steering committee. We created Mass State Chapter, the YNP's first state chapter. The importance of third parties, grassroots activism, elected office turnover with fresh mindset, fresh feel, as many of these candidates sought to provide, is more important now than ever. I think we can all agree on that fact. The Massachusetts State Chapter, we do have a petition here today as well that if you are a resident of Massachusetts, registered voter, it will allow us to seek minor party designation on our ballots. So we appreciate that. That's been one of our efforts as well. In addition to that, we are a standing state chapter. We have our bank account. We are recognized by the Mass OCPF. So any additional signatures would be welcome to that. In Mass and in the wider YNP, we believe in the power of community, compassion, and collaboration. We champion the values of democracy, self-determination, integrity, sustainability, and empathy. And we stand as a beacon of hope for residents who felt overlooked or underserved by both their state capitals and Washington. We are driven by a commitment to serve real people, and we strive to create a political landscape where every voice is heard and concern addressed, which is what brought us into contact, Stephen specifically, into contact with our delegates here. We are determined to offer a viable alternative that reflects the rich tapestry of the Northeast region's diverse populations and perspectives. Together, we hope to forge a path toward a brighter future, one where equitable opportunities abound, our environment is cherished, and our democracy thrives. We hope that even after this meeting today, you will join us as we work tirelessly to protect our values and advocate for a better tomorrow, ensuring the Northeast be strong and true. With that, can you get a show of hands? Does anyone in the crowd have run for political office, is aspiring to run? Awesome. We really appreciate you being here and taking part of this. After we have a few questions for our panel here, we will open it up at about the 35-minute mark, so they can field any questions you might have as well, or that we haven't covered. With that, let me do some candidate introductions. Josh, as you know, the chair, he also had run for the Waterford Board of Finance. In the middle, we have Randy Dudek, who was our first endorsement. Randy's from Fall River, Massachusetts. He had run for Fall River School Committee. He is a father of 3 cybersecurity analysts and was a first-time candidate. My experience with Randy was excellent. We were both completely new to the process. Ethan and I made up some endorsement questionnaires. We met with Randy, and we felt both like it was a great fit, and we were going to work well together. And we're really glad that we did, and we hope to continue so in the future. We have Peter Jude on the end there. He is from Cambridge as well. He is a physician, educator, health policy researcher, husband, and father. He is extremely intelligent. He knows exactly what he wanted to run for and represent during this race, and did it extremely well. We're honored to work with him and hope to do so again in the future. We also have Zion Sharon, who is a Cambridge resident, Cornell graduate with a background in finance, and this was your first campaign, correct? Honored to work with him as well. So we do have some questions. We'll get into those. But first, I think we should go right down the line and have each of you just a brief introduction beyond some things that I may have just said that you might want the crowd to know.
Sure, I will. I think you, between myself and you, Derek, covered it pretty well. But Josh Kelly, I'm from Waterford, Connecticut. I've run for office there 4 different times, lost once, lost twice, won twice, and the only times that I've won have been with a third party. My major party runs were not as successful, but I did most recently run for Board of Finance, as is said.
Hi again, Randy Dudek. Currently in Fall River, but I'm actually a Detroit, Michigan resident. Moved to Massachusetts 15 or so years ago. Moved to Fall River 6 years ago, and as I'm sure we'll get into in more depth, decided to make the run for the school committee.
Hi, Zion Sharon. I live out in Cambridge, Mass, where I ran for city council. I made the decision to run for first time. I was 24 and ran on a platform largely focused on campaign finance as well, not taking money from PACs and making sure that we were focused on people first.
Hi, I'm Peter Shu. I live in the same city as Zion, Cambridge. I've been all over the places. Like, I grew up in California, medical training was in Ohio, then I went to Tennessee for more training, then Cambridge for the past 6 years. The thing that really drew me to politics was our public health crisis. And so that was really the incentive. When I got to know YNP, there are 4 core values. I'm not gonna recite them because I know all of you know everything. But the one that really touched me was empathy. As a physician, that's a big thing. And nowadays, if you're not my party, you're an enemy. That kind of mentality is just, I think that is just sad. And so I think it's an honor to be endorsed by YNP, and it was a great pleasure to get to know everyone.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Let's start with the 2 candidates who this was their first time running. What made you run for office as opposed to some other people who had gone through this process before?
Like I mentioned, my family was relatively new to Fall River, and really quickly when we moved, it was under short notice. We kind of had to move to a place in Massachusetts that could take our family in 2 months. And anytime you move somewhere, the first thing you do is Google the area, Google the schools, and everything you read about Fall River is horrible. So I went in nervous, but in all honesty, everything there has been better than I ever would have dreamt it would have been. I love it there. I'm glad it's home. The one problem that we noticed was that one day one of my daughters came home from school crying because her favorite teacher was taking a job out of state. So in my head, I'm like, I hope I don't know where this is going, but it's all right. So I explained that if she's moving out of state, she can't necessarily commute to Massachusetts all the time. And then I made the mistake of asking her, did she mention what state this new job is in? And my daughter weeps, yes, Rhode Island, which is not really the next state, it's one city over. Our teachers have gone over a year without a contract, and the school committee was just dragging them along. I went to a school committee meeting to speak publicly in favor of the teachers, just to support them. And while at that meeting, I just realized the total dysfunction. The entire committee was split, basically, I don't want to say party lines, but there were 2 definitive groups. And people on both sides were really just there to see if they could get their name in the papers this month. And nobody had any interest in doing anything for the teachers or the kids. And that's when I realized this is a need. Someone actually needs to be standing up for what the schools are supposed to be, and that's what prompted me to run.
For me, I grew up in upstate New York and I came to Cambridge after undergrad. I actually had a different experience. I picked Cambridge because I absolutely loved it and everything I read was phenomenal. And they changed zoning, and one of the things that I noticed through reading the zoning is that it completely got rid of handicap parking spaces and loading zones. And so you could build a 200-unit building that had no handicap accessibility. And as someone who recently lost my mom to cancer, she was wheelchair bound for the last 8 months of her life or so, I got to see firsthand how difficult it is for people in those situations. And when I reached out to city councilors, no one responded. And I realized that this was something that really bothered me. In New York, I had called my state assembly member and I didn't even leave my number to call back or my full name, and she called me back the next morning and left a voicemail, and that's the connection that I had with those people. And I was really disappointed that on a local level, people weren't being responsive. Even recently, there was an issue with a 2-lane bike lane where a car was driving directly towards me, and I brought it up that the flex post is no longer there. I emailed all 9 counselors. I got one response of thank you, we've received this email, and then I got one person out of the 9 who actually is following up. And recently I just saw that the city is working to move that forward because they're aware of it. But I saw the power that one counselor can have out of 9 who's doing their job, and I just wanted to make sure that we had more than 1 out of 9. It'd be nice if we had 9 out of 9, but at least 2 out of 9 would be significantly better than 1 out of 9.
This question for Josh and Peter. We'll start with Peter. Pass the microphone, please. Thank you. What were the biggest challenges you and your campaign faced? And then backing that up, how did it differ from your previous campaign?
So, my first campaign was at least at this point 3 years ago. It was 2023. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know what I was doing. Before I went in, I was a researcher. I taught at Harvard Medical School. I worked at the hospital. I still work at the hospital over there. I taught residents and med students. And I had an academic life where I was doing research in health policy. And at some point, I said, I don't think that was the thing I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I loved health policy, but just not the academics and stuff like that. I have mad respect for my colleagues. That wasn't a thing for me. So one of my mentors came to me and said, if you really like health policy, you don't like academics, go into politics. I looked at him, I was like, hell no, man. Like I ain't gonna do that. Like I didn't go to med school for this. And then more and more people started talking about it, and I started reflecting on it. And I spoke to my wife, and my wife was like, "Are you mad?" And eventually we said, "Okay, let's try it." So the first attempt was brutal. My schedule was chaotic. I didn't have time to door knock. I learned that I didn't know anything. That was what I learned. And then so I was gonna just drop it. And after the election, I got 2 letters, handwritten, and those really touched my heart. So I told my wife, you know what? I think I'm gonna do it again. She said, "Are you serious?" And then she was supportive. So this time, I would say the biggest challenge I faced this time was that I didn't do enough to get my name out there. I think that was my fault. I door knocked a lot, but I think at say apartment complexes where you can't really go in and just door knock and stuff like that, I didn't do enough. Like I simply didn't do enough. And next time I'll do more. And I think there are ways to doing more. It's just that this time I didn't do it. And there are also affinity groups that I failed to attach myself to this time that I should have. For example, and I don't mean to bring different stuff into this thing, but there was a lot of recommendations that on my palm cards I should have had maybe 1 line of Mandarin Chinese, which I write, I read, I speak, I even translate for patients in the hospital. I should have. That was a good point. I didn't know what I didn't know. So I would say that those were the biggest things that I took away from this time. Before the election, my wife and I had a serious talk. She was like, "How long are you gonna do this for?" I said, "I don't know." And we came up with a magic number where if we got over 500 number 1 votes, we would do it again. Because that was that was like, 1/4, and then it's doable next time and stuff like that. And we got over that, and so she was happy but sad, but whatever, mixed feelings. So we'll be stronger next time. So those were my experiences and challenges. Thank you.
So I think I had 2 major challenges in my race. The first is ballot related. Connecticut has weird ballots to begin with, but regardless of where you are, any given election that you're in, the number of candidates, the number of seats that are open, the math can work out in very strange ways. So in 2025, I was running on the YNP line. There were 2 Republicans who were running for Board of Finance, 3 Democrats, and there were 3 seats open. So as I'm knocking on each door, I have to, if I'm talking to a Democrat behind that door, convince them to not vote for a member of their own party and vote for me instead. A very hard lift. That's option A. Option B, there's a Republican behind the door, and I have to convince them to include me in their vote. I don't know how many of you have spoken to a member of the Republican Party recently or have spoken to me, but I had some challenges with that. And option 3, somebody who's unaffiliated, trying to convince them that a third party is a good vote in general, regardless of which way they might lean, regardless of how they voted in the past. That in and of itself was the challenge, trying to figure out how to best spend my time. Do I spend most of my time talking to Republicans because I have that extra vote to use? Do I spend most of my time trying to detract votes away from Democrats? Do I spend most of my time just talking to everybody on the street who might be willing to speak with me? Allocation of time with very limited resources in a municipal election is difficult. The other item that this number 2 challenge that I faced in a municipal election, at least in my town in Connecticut, very few people actually like to talk about issues. They will say, you know, hey, I've been a resident for 30, 40, 50 years, however many generations. These are literally things that they will put on their walk card, a 5th generation Waterford resident. And that's not particularly helpful to the policy direction for the town, the municipality. I'm somebody who's very focused on the issues, and for a lot of people that works really well. For a lot of people who I stopped and talked to, it was not helpful. So trying to figure out how to hone that message was part of my challenge, but kind of much like Peter just described, I had a threshold in my mind of, hey, if I do this well first time around, this brand new third party in a race where the numbers weren't necessarily on my side as you add up the other candidates running, I know it's doable next time, and I feel like I certainly passed that threshold. But those are certainly 2 of the largest challenges that I faced in Waterford.
Thank you. This next question will go to the entire panel, and we'll get into a little bit of the weeds of specific strategies in a little bit. And Zion already with the same previous frame of mind question, what are some strategies you employ to overcome challenges?
Yeah, so for me, one of the strategies that we decided to do was to have those trifolds. We were the only campaign that had trifold cards that we were handing out. And mind you, this campaign had maybe 20 candidates that were running, because there was also a write-in. And so for us, part of the reason we did that is when I was talking to older demographics, they would say that a lot of these cards would have 3 points that were pretty vague, right? Like affordable housing, but how do you get affordable housing? How are you going to approach that? Or something like accessibility. But then they'd say, but in order to read anything about it, you have to go online. And as one person told me, I like this because I can read your book and I don't use, quote, the interweb. And so having that little bit of accessibility is something that I thought about because I was close with my great-grandfather who lived to 101, and I got to know him, and he learned technology, but most of his peers would not. They'd call him up and ask him for help, and I was thinking, how can we make sure that we're accessible to this demographic? And I think I actually did very well with people that were, as far as first round, that were over the age of 80 or under the age of 30, because a lot of people like seeing a young 20-year-old running, or someone who said, wow, this person actually understood my difficulty, and there was people that were 70 plus on the campaign that didn't tap into that same accessibility issue.
So, I would say, from my first time to my second time, my first time I said my schedule was chaotic, it was hard. So the first thing I did was I knew I was going to run the second time. So I spoke to my colleagues, my superiors in the hospital, and I arranged my schedule to such a way that after February, I started door knocking after February, that my schedule was completely empty for like 5 months. And rain or snow, I door knocked. We counted, I door knocked more than 10,000 doors, and we got like that's definitely a lot of doors, and you definitely get a lot of different personalities, to be very fair. So in different languages. But you know, it is what it is, and so I think one of the things you have to be, you just have to be thick-skinned, and you just kind of go on. So time management was number one thing. I do want to say that I think I could probably do better in terms of time management. I could be more efficient. Sort of like what Josh said, you know, you have limited time, with limited resources, but you have so many doors, so many people to talk to. How do you do it? You know, this time I thought, you know, I'm gonna have 5 months of just nothing. I'm just gonna door knock. It was still not enough time, to be very fair. There was just a lot of people. So next time I'll be smarter. And you know, this time I had volunteers. The first time I didn't even know how to spell volunteers. So you know, this time we had volunteers, and we had groups of people that really worked well. And I wish I had allocated more time to that group of people so that they could kind of reach out more on my behalf. That would be a next time kind of task. Another thing that went well was, I think, the palm cards and the yard signs. I did not have too many palm cards the first time. I didn't have any yard sign the first time. With the yard sign, people did actually reach out and say, hey, you know, I saw you and I just wanted to learn more about you. So those were the things that I think I did well this time in terms of differences in strategy compared to the first time. Thank you.
For me, I think the two biggest things that I wish I had known or done differently and will do differently next time. I realized that Fall River is one of the 26 whatever cities, not a town, and that's one of the bigger cities in Massachusetts, but I didn't realize that running for school committee was going to be a capital P political race. I really thought it was going to be people who had different ideas on how to help the schools running against people with different ideas on how to help the schools. Looking back on it, no, the guy who's actually currently the chair of the school committee is also already talking about how to unseat the mayor and his plans for his personal future. I wasn't ready for that going in. I also didn't realize, and I don't know if this is Fall River versus, you know, more different than other towns and cities, only having been there for 6 years and not, you know, being a 5th generation, I do think that did hurt my campaign the first time around. You read online, everyone's like, it's time for new blood, it's time for new blood. And I'm like, here I am. And they're like, man, that's too new. We need blood, not quite that new. And should I run again? And I go back and forth either between I'm absolutely never running for anything ever again, or when can I pull the paper so we can start? It's no in the middle, it's one or the other. And I think it's probably gonna be yes. What I would just need to do is make sure that I've basically talked to every single registered voter in the entire city. Because everyone I did actually get to spend any time with, at least to my face, seemed to like what I had to say. It just, for mostly the reasons above, didn't work out the way that I was hoping it did.
I feel like this is going to be similar to what everyone's really shared, especially about scarcity of resources. But one of the tactics that I tried to employ, and I go back and forth on whether this was a good idea or not a good idea constantly. But I have, and the Connecticut YNP has cultivated a relationship with a friend of mine who is very active within the Green Party, but he is happy to work with anybody across party lines to make sure that we have access to data. So the state Green Party shared voter registration resources with us, and he was able to crunch numbers on how likely is it that each household in my town is willing to, or has in the past at least, come out to vote in a municipal election. So I had a door-by-door breakdown on a percentage basis of how likely it was that the person behind that door had voted before, as an indicator of would they vote again. I decided in this race to knock on doors where the individuals who would vote lived, and I decided to just leave literature and keep on walking for the doors that had never voted in a municipal race in the past. Part of the reason I'm involved with politics in the first place is because I believe very sincerely that we need to get more people involved. Even in presidential races, we don't see 100% voter turnout, not even close. And we need to do better. So from an ethical standpoint, I want to do better to knock on doors where people haven't chosen to vote in municipal races. Municipal races getting 30 to 40% turnout in Waterford. So that's a lot of doors. And there's a whole, that's most of the voters that could be coming out in favor of a candidate like me. Decided to play the game and knock on just the doors of people who were most likely to vote, and they went for the people that they always go for. No surprise. I think that there's a lot to be said for trying to be smarter about how you spend your time. I'm not sold that the way that I tried to get around my challenge was the right way, but I'm still working on it.
So we have some diverse races still here. I would like to know, political races. I would like to know what are the biggest issues or talking points relative to each of your races that kind of shaped your campaign? And are they evolving into the next year, into this year?
Like I mentioned, being fairly new to Fall River, I did the online research and saw how horrible the schools were, and found out after 4 years of being there, no, they're actually okay. There's plenty of room for improvement, but also they're not falling apart. It's not like, the buildings are largely, not all, but largely fairly new, well kept, and the teachers I all interacted with were doing the best job they could under a slightly limited budget. But if you go to any of the school committee meetings, all you hear from, if you go now, if all you hear from 5 of the 6 school committee members is how everything is on fire, everything is trash, and everybody needs to go. And then you've got one incumbent who's like, actually, everything here is just tremendously perfect. It's great. And while I'm closer aligned to where he's at compared to everybody else, I found myself in the position of, well, no, everything isn't perfect. If everything was perfect, you wouldn't have new people running. I'm not here because everything's perfect. But it's nowhere near as bad as the people who are still there are trying to make it out to be. And we needed to, accent the things that are good. We do still have a public relations nightmare where all anybody hears is the bad stuff. We need to focus on the good stuff, but also take reasonable steps to make sure that things that aren't going as well as they should actually get addressed and start getting better. But with where it's at right now, it's basically what had been 3 against 3 with the mayor being the tie-breaking vote on everything in the school committee. It's now 5 on 2. And within the first 3 months of the new school committee, they've already fired the superintendent without cause, hired 2 superintendents to replace her. So we're currently paying 3 superintendents. No one wants to say where this magic money is coming from. And the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has already been notified that the school committees under shenanigans, they've investigated 3 online school committee meetings and already made an in-person visit just to let them know that they're keeping an eye on what's going on. Which is funny in the moment to me, just because I can be bitter. But then I step back and I'm like, we didn't have to do it this way. And that's why deep down I think I'm going to try to help fix it next time around.
I'll chime in and say one of the issues that I tried in order to distance myself from other candidates and make my campaign a little more substantive. I very specifically had a list of a platform published on my website and on wall cards that I passed around. And the big issue that I pushed the biggest change that I pushed for is property tax reform. Not something that the town of Waterford actually has control over as a municipality in the state. Towns are only allowed to levy property taxes in Connecticut. And it's a very regressive tax, and it puts our neighborhoods as being particularly out of reach from an affordability perspective, and puts a huge strain on the lowest income families in our town. So I said, as a member of the Board of Finance, and as I've been an active proponent, but I will continue to use that to leverage more advocacy at the state level to change this so that we have different a different mix of revenue that's able to be levied. So truly, property tax reform was the name of the game, and I would like to see it even done away with entirely in Connecticut. A lot of people were very interested. It did attract attention, and now one of the candidates who recently just secured a spot on the primary ballot on the Democratic side for governor is running on a very similar platform of property tax reform. Certainly didn't get the idea from me, but it was something that I've gone from hearing very little about to something that is being discussed almost daily in political circles in Connecticut. So it's good to see that the conversation keeps going forward. And it makes me heartened to know that I feel like I did have my finger on the pulse of the community when I was going out and talking. Just different tactics, more time, and other strategies that we've already talked about that need to be employed to get the message out there, all the better.
Thank you. To Zion and Peter, for those of you who don't know, there were several open seats for Cambridge City Council. So both of them running and seeking our endorsement, or I think we saw there, but I think we contacted them first. Wasn't a conflict of interest. My question to you is, did you both engage the same areas of Cambridge, and did you both see deferring or uniform needs from voters?
Yeah, so fortunately, Cambridge is ranked choice, which is great. They also are at large, which is a challenge when you're not an incumbent, because there's a lot of people that live in Cambridge. And if you had a district, you can knock all those doors a few times. I was in the same boat of being out there knocking doors. I actually did the opposite end. So since I was newer to the city, I wanted to hear everyone's perspective. So I threw away the voter registration list and instead knocked doors on everyone. I talked to some people that would be like, I'm not an American citizen. And I'd be like, that's great. Now what are your concerns with the city? Because it still matters. And they're still living here today. What I wish I did better is use the list of people that were voters for about a month before the election, just to encourage them to go out, so that I was able to narrow down. And that's something I totally will make sure to do. But something that I think are the two biggest issues in Cambridge that are always talked about are bike lanes and zoning. There are 3 packs in Cambridge, or there was 3. And 2 of them are related to zoning, and 1 of them is our bike safety group, which is our biggest PAC in Cambridge. And they actually outraise a lot of individual candidates by 2x. And so that's one of the things that I thought was really interesting, but something that I tried to add to the conversation was talking about campaign finance a lot. Something that I realized is the 3 people that raised the most. So in Cambridge, out of the top 9 fundraisers, all 9 of them were the ones that got seats, and it's 9 at large. What concerned me a little bit is there was 3 people that were doing the 5th generation type talk, the Forever Cambridge, and their donation percentage from inside the district were the lowest. And I, who was new to the area, had about 70% of my donations coming in from Cambridge, and people that would talk about being 3rd generation were having 20% of their donations. And they were having the CEO of Eversource was donating, or these other big groups. And so I tried to draw a lot of light to that. And now I think that even in our state races, we're hearing a lot of people talk about, well, this person's taking more lobbyist money. Where's the money coming from? And that's something I tried to introduce and kind of turn the focus towards, because, some things are going to have, there's always going to be issues with zoning or bike lanes or any local issue. But what I really wanted to have people know is, well, if financiers are winning the campaigns, who's financing these people? Because that is where their loyalty is going to be tied. And now a lot of people know, at least where it is. It took a little while, and I think if I had done a better message, it would have been easier. But I think if I were to run again, that everyone would be a little bit more aware.
So Zion and I, we ran for the same sort of position, but not exactly the same position. And I don't think I have any conflict of interest with Zion. In fact, I think he's a good candidate. Honestly, like, I don't know him personally. I'm not gonna lie, but his platforms, I agree. We can't. My wife doesn't even agree with me on everything. So we can't agree on everything. But I respect his platform. I think he has a good platform. I think, and Derek, I'm really sorry, what was your question?
My question was, when you engaged voters and constituents, did you both find them kind of uniform in their concerns and needs for Cambridge?
So that part, I agree with Zion. There are the two biggest issues in Cambridge will be affordable housing and bike lanes. I tried myself to really, I wouldn't say distance, because I knew the issues. I had to know the issues. You can't just go in and go like, I don't know anything about zoning. I don't know anything about bike lanes. I have no stance. That wouldn't sit well with anyone. So I knew my stance, not gonna lie. But I went in with a different perspective. I really focused on public health because that was my main issue. My basically thing I asked voters, do you see needles at playgrounds where your kids play or on streets? Do you see homeless folks? Do you see psychiatric breakdowns in Central Square, which there is a lot, to be very fair? And that echoed with folks. And so, that was my perspective. But public health was not really over the past 20 years, Cambridge City Council election, no one has ever run on a public health platform. And I'm not saying that anyone should or needs to run on a public health platform. It's just that that's my platform. And I thought that actually worked really well. But most people that I talk to, 70-80%, it's either do you support building tall like everywhere and like changing the neighborhood zoning, or do you support bike lanes? That's 70-80%. I'm not gonna lie. And I think I have to have my own stance. And but I would always say, however, this is what I'm really here for. And none of the other 9 counselors, they focus on these things, and I want to focus on these things, and I think those are pertinent to your lives and my lives and everything, and that would echo with folks. So yeah, there are definitely big issues, but I think there are also rooms for awareness of other issues that Canton Bridges are receptive to.
At this point, we will invite any audience questions up. You can use the mic in the center there, but if your voice beckons, do not feel like you have to.
Peter, so you indicated that this time around you were able to engage volunteers to go knock on doors with you. I'm curious, are any of you that had a volunteer network, are any of you doing anything to maintain and engage your previous volunteers? So that way, 2 years from now, when it's time to call on them again, do they have a reason to show up?
So yeah, I have a group chat with them. It's not a lot. It's like 12 of volunteers. 6 of them were high school students. One of them I ended up writing a letter of rec for, and he actually got into Cornell. And he was very happy, and his parents were like, "Oh my God, this is great." I was like, "That's not the point of running a campaign, but good bonus." So I do try to keep in touch with them. I'll invite them for coffee and pizza sometimes. Maybe at this point, maybe once every 3 months or so, I try to kind of stay in touch with them, and they're good people. They're actually. Sometimes they're too good. I think sometimes they're innocent. Like they go to the doors, and certain voters are, I don't want to say malignant, but certain voters they have this preformed agenda already that they want to talk about, and they're kind of mean. And I feel bad for these volunteers. One of them came back and cried and said, I don't think I answered the right answer. I said there was no right answer. Like you are. In my eyes, you are the best. You don't feel bad or anything like that. If you actually feel bad, that means that person probably did something wrong. Like you were just knocking on the door. This is not. That's bullying. Like, come on, man. So yes, to answer your question, I do things to kind of stay in touch with them.
So for me, I break out support into 2 main groups: donors and volunteers. Volunteers were very under 30 heavy, largely because door knocking is pretty physical, and so those people have time. Then I had other people that were typically on the older end that had finances, but not necessarily the ability to go out in 90-degree weather and be out there for an hour. So I've stayed in touch with some of them. They've reached out to me to go to volunteer events, and I've gone, like we did a walk for hunger, and I've texted other people that were on our team and said, hey, this donor from our campaign is doing this this nonprofit event, and would you like to come? So that kind of ties people together. And then I realized that for me, I did not do well promoting rank 1. I think I was the only candidate that didn't have rank 1 everywhere, and because of that, I didn't get a lot of rank 1s. I did very, very well with rank 2 and 3. And I had almost 6,000 people put me on the ballot at some point. And so what I realized is these people, I have a lot more support than I maybe see in those rank 1s. And just being involved, they'll see me and connect. So like just last week, I gave a rent control presentation. So we have a rent control ballot in Massachusetts. I went to both the pro and the con side. So I went to Mass landlords and asked them for their against statement. I went to Housing for All Massachusetts for their pro, and really gave a presentation that wasn't just here's my opinion, I'm a renter, I'm gonna have some biases, but I came there from a perspective of, hey, this is how you will know 80 or 90% of everything you should about this ballot question, and most people don't necessarily have that. So we had like a 12-page printout, and those people that were there were several people that had volunteered for my campaign. I flyered all of mid-Cambridge with little notes saying it's a neighborhood association, and I had people reach out that were donors from my prior campaign. So I think those are the ways that I'm engaging. Isn't necessarily like targeting just my volunteers or my donor base and saying this is how I engage them, but just how do I stay an active contributor inside of Cambridge? And then I think that whether intentionally or unintentionally is going to result in more people like knowing who I am, and I would hope would encourage them to come out again.
Like I mentioned, my probably biggest mistake was underestimating how political my race was, which meant my volunteer team was my wife and my two 12-year-old daughters. About once a month or so, we just say hi. That would be something that I would work on next time, is getting more volunteers involved.
And I'll just in the interest of time, I'll very quickly say, my race was a little different in that the Connecticut ballot has parties listed on it. The Massachusetts local races do not have the parties listed next to individual names. Because I have a lot of connections with my local Democratic Party, but they had 3 candidates who were running. There were 3 spots open. I lost every single volunteer that I could have had from that party. If they had chosen not to endorse one more person, I think that anybody from that group may have come out. Very difficult to try and maintain relationships when party politics enters it to such a significant degree. So I'm very jealous of you all in Massachusetts for the way that your ballot looks. And certainly there are other states that have different ballot challenges, and they're all unique. But that certainly was one that I faced in Connecticut. So kind of like Randy, my volunteer group was pretty limited to my immediate circle and some of you that I'm seeing in the audience from Connecticut. So I'll leave it at that.
I think we can take any more. Are we ready?
We can take one.
Okay. Do we have one more, please?
Do you want to ask this?
No, you're up there.
Yeah, I just had a question, mainly for Zan, because I heard from you most about PACs. Do you think, and I think this is kind of a higher level, maybe like more regional or national, do you think that PACs and super PACs are potentially dangerous for politics in general, but also for the actual candidacy and who's actually winning, where maybe their ideology or beliefs may align somewhere else than what they actually may feel internally?
Yeah, so I have a very strong feeling about PACs. One of the super PACs asked me if I want to be on the board. Long story short, I am on their board. They no longer have a super PAC. And I feel very strongly about that in politics. And I think that overall, transparency of where funds are coming from, we should have a set limit. And if, I was very public in my campaign. There's some people that criticize anyone who has wealth. I go, if you have money and you want to contribute the maximum contribution to 3 candidates, good for you. You're funding elections. What I don't want to see is I don't want to see someone being able to put in $100 million into an election where then they have more control over that candidate than everybody else who supported their campaign together. And PACs and super PACs allow that. So in my opinion, I think that we should not allow any sort of PAC contributions, and I say no PAC money, no exceptions. Even I had a PAC that I really support what they're doing. The chair came up to me and said, hey, we're considering doing endorsement or donations through the PAC. And I just respectfully was like, it doesn't matter to me how it is. It's a principle thing. And I think that our elections as a whole, both local and federal, would be exponentially better if we took out that type of overfunding from certain individuals.
Okay, I think with that, we will be moving on from the panel. I want to personally thank each and every one of our candidates, and I hope it was as obvious to you as it was to me when I interviewed them, that the disposition directly represents what the YNP is trying to go for, and the empathetic foundation, people first politics. So thank you, and we hope to work together again in the future.